I'm gonna
Oh
do
no,
that
go ahead. Yeah, record video.
too. Okay. Why don't we start with just like introduce yourself and tell us what you do for a living?
Oh, hey, I'm Kris Keppeler. I'm an audiobook narrator, producer, and consultant, writer, voice actor. I'm also an actor with an IMDb page and a podcaster.
That's great. Tell me a little bit about how you got into that. Did you always know you wanted to do, I guess, writing and like narrating or voiceover work?
Well, I started out as a singer.
Oh, you are? Yeah, that's a great
Yeah, I
place to start.
started out as a singer. I started out in junior high choir.
Yeah.
And I like singing a lot, and I continued singing into my early 20s, and then I got bored with choir, and it's like, well, what am I going to do now? And I didn't really know. And then a blind date took me to a Gilbert and Sullivan
All right.
performance, and on the back of the program it said, we're looking for chorus members. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's give that a try.
Yeah.
So in the next production, I was a fairy.
Right on.
Yeah. And it was a heck of a lot more interesting than choir.
So that's fantastic. Did you start seeing success right away, like as soon as you left choir? Did it take a little bit of time? What was
Oh, yeah. It took quite a bit of time.
okay?
I started back, started taking voice lessons, and then I started taking acting lessons, and it it took quite a bit of time before I started booking more regular theater work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in the process of getting into voiceover, so I'm familiar about that's when you said, oh, I started with singing. I was like, that's a great place to start, because now I I started with voiceover and my voice coach says start with singing, or like, maybe take a singing class, just to help.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
why don't you tell the listeners why that's a good idea?
I have to say, every time I step in front of the mic, I'm using my singing skills. I'm using, because what singing teaches you is how to properly produce your voice. It's
Mhm.
just proper production. And so, um, and especially if you're doing audiobooks, we're in front of the mic for hours. That's one way, to help make sure that it doesn't get too tired, that I'm producing, uh, I'm not overworking my vocal cords.
Yeah.
Because with singing, that's, you learn how to not torque on your vocal cords.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, you sort of find your limitations. It's like I don't know, like let's say the happy birthday song, for instance. If you start out with happy birthday, it goes up from there. But if you start at
Yes.
the highest you can,
Yeah.
you actually start happy birthday with happy birth
Yeah.
as low as you can, because it jumps really
Yeah.
high. And I guess you kind of learn that about your voice. If you start out at the highest, um, you know, next chorus is going to hurt you. You're going to put a strain on your voice. People are going to hear that you're not going to be able to hit those notes. um
Yes. And it also teaches you about, especially if you're doing characters, where to pitch your voice.
yes.
Because maybe I'm doing a dad, and
Yeah.
then I'm doing the mother, and then I'm doing the little kid.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, and you know how long you can do that. I could do a dad voice for maybe 3 minutes before I have to take a sip of water or something, or a deeper. I'm with you on that. That's great.
Yes.
Is there a specific microphone there's so many microphones. So is there a specific microphone that you I know and for every person there is a specific microphone for that person. I'm just curious. Everybody I talk to, I like to, nudge them if they're in the audio realm, and see what microphone they're using. I'm just out of curiosity.
Oh yeah, I would probably help me if I was more, into mics. I just have a Rode NT1A.
Hey,
So
those
it's actually, yeah, it's recommended for audiobook work. It's a very,
nice.
very quiet mic.
Yes, those
So,
Australians really know how to make a affordable mic that does really good. Look at this. I don't know if I can can you
yeah.
see that? Does
Yep.
that look familiar?
Yep. Yep.
I got one of those. Yeah, great. That's fantastic. Also, to back up that singing thing, the thing I didn't get to is projecting, being able to not run out of breath. Whenever you get to the end of a sentence, you have to keep on it. You know how much wind, I suppose, to kind of suck in and hold there to get you through the sentence so that you're not running out of air and making everybody
Yes. It,
uncomfortable.
yeah. Yeah. It also does. Yeah. Because with singing, you learn how to use your breath and phrasing. And yes, it's, yeah. Uh-huh.
What are some projects that you enjoyed working on?
Oh gosh. Um,
Or do you
I
enjoy
never,
doing this work? You
oh
might not even
gosh.
like it.
Well, I love telling funny stories. So my podcast is one of my favorite things to do because I just love telling funny stories. I love
Yeah,
doing comedy. Um, and I also really enjoyed it. I narrated and produced an entire series on Wicca.
very cool.
I knew nothing about Wicca until I started reading the books, and I just really enjoyed the learning process. And it was just, you know, just fun. I've narrated some books on tarot. That was spirituality is one of my, it's about my voice. It's
Yeah,
spirituality is one of my genres. So I've done a lot of spirituality stuff, which is, I really enjoy it. I think the one where I really wondered is I narrated a book on self-hypnosis.
ooh,
And I'm like wondering, am I going to hypnotize somebody?
fall asleep and hit the mic. Poof. That's great. I
That was fascinating. That was really fascinating.
that's really cool that you're into Wicca. I want to get back to that because that's a subject that I'm also interested in. But tell my listeners about your podcast in case they want to cross over and check you out. What is your podcast focused on?
It's called Does This Happen to You?
Mhm.
And it's just I narrate stories about life and befuddlement from really fantastic writers that you rarely hear in audio.
Yeah,
Just, yeah.
cool. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
How
And
did you
it's
get in? Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut
okay.
you off.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just interested in the funny things about the mundane.
Yeah, like that.
Just
Do you have a comedy background? Did you do any improv or anything like that?
yes, yeah, I have training in improv. I've done comedic characters in theater work. Done some comedy and film, not a lot. I have a tendency to do drama in film, but
Yeah. You land where you land.
you land where you land. Yeah, yeah. So I'm actually lucky that I can do both comedy and drama.
Yeah,
Uh, I fit
yeah,
in either. Yeah.
that's the dream. Are you a Libra? It seems like a good balance.
No,
The reason why I
I'm a
asked.
I'm a cusp and between Taurus and Gemini.
Ah, okay. Gemini. So you've got a little bit of what is help me out here because I'm sure you're more well versed than I am. But Gemini is in the realm of communication, isn't it? Isn't that like a trait of?
I'm not real familiar with my horse.
Hey, we'll leave that alone because it sounds like we're both novice in that area. What how were you raised? You said that spirituality is something that's important to you or of interest to you. Did you have a religious upbringing, or is this something that you got into a little bit later?
Really got into spirituality later, although my dad was a big church goer. So we went to, church on a regular basis, but I was never really into that. I'm into more, as I got older, I was more drawn to just spirituality in general and more Eastern philosophy. And I also like Wicca. Now that I learned about it, it's like, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah. And Wicca is kind of derived from like paganism, if is that accurate
It's
or?
Yes, it's basically a form of modern paganism.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. And it also, I mean, if you kind of dig a little deep into paganism, has a lot of the Eastern philosophy that you sort of were talking
Yeah,
about before it was
yeah,
it was ringing true for you. Same
yes,
for me. I grew up, going to church, and then I sort of started digging into Eastern philosophy. I'm like, hey, that makes a little more sense to me. I like that. That rings true with me. And if you look at it from both sides, I suppose it's a little bit of, this and that. Anyways, I
yeah,
I digress, but that's really cool. I'm happy to hear that you're into, that type of, you and I are kind of synced up in that type of like spirituality. Do you do
yeah.
do you do you
Do I what?
do you practice meditation? Do you meditate at all?
I have tried. Um, Not been very good at it.
Okay.
Yeah. I've definitely, but um I have, so I suppose I am a little bit in a way. I was having trouble with dry eyes, so uh, my eye doctor said we'll get this mask that you can put over your eyes and put it in the microwave, warm it up, and put it over your eyes. And I do that at night, and then I find I lay there and let my mind wander, and yeah. So I guess I'm doing it a little bit.
Good. Kris, I'm going to tell you about an app, and this is not sponsored or anything. It's just something that I stumbled across
Uh-huh.
because I try to read a lot of books about meditation, but hopefully this will help you. I don't know. There is an app called Waking Up that is phenomenal. It lets
Oh,
you,
really?
you have a free trial, I think, for a week or something like that. So you can kind
Oh,
of check it out and see if you want to dig into it or not. And then it gets a little price. It's like $100 and something for a year.
yeah.
I don't know what everybody's budget looks like, but if you've ever been interested in like digging a little deeper, or getting better at meditating, which is kind of an arbitrary statement. That sounds I'm so good at meditating. Like I'm way better than you. It sounds so
Now,
silly.
yeah. Now, while I'm writing, I listen to meditative music.
Oh, you do? Great. Yeah. Yeah. Tell
Mhm.
me what you're working on. Um I'm currently writing a pilot for a children's show. And when I had this idea, I was like, this is fantastic. Then I started writing it and I was like, I am insane. What does it matter with me? This is this is turning out to be terrible. I need so much more practice. So I am kind of contracting my initial momentum and sharpening my tools before I jump right in and write the whole pilot. So tell me a little bit about your writing process, what you enjoy writing.
I write, well, I write a comedy blog about once a quarter. That's Does This Happen to You?
Uh-huh.
It's about some of my escapades. Yeah. While walking the dogs or dealing with our, yeah, urban rabbits around here. Um, and then I write about and that's how I started in writing. I'd done some business writing, and because writing is a very new thing for me, probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It's not something I've been doing for a really long time. And I found that after writing this blog for a while, I enjoyed it. And it's like, well, let's expand. And so I read about things that really interest me: health and fitness, technology. I write about small business technology for a company, actually.
Wow.
Um, and so I just generally write about things that, yeah, interest me, which is basically usually health and fitness, technology stuff. I have taken on some other writing jobs that interest me. I wrote about veterinary consolidation.
Yeah.
That I found that it was kind of interesting. And I rewrote an article about taxes and divorces. That was eye-opening.
I bet. Do
So
you
it's
who
yeah.
who wrangles you? How do you get these gigs? Like how does somebody find you and say, "Hey, I want you to write about this I don't know, taxes and divorce or this veterinarian
Yeah,
article."
I found those on freelance sites. I use Upwork, so I've done
Okay.
work on Upwork. Um, the the one I write about small business technology, actually, I'm a BizX member. It's a barter site, and that's where I found that one. And
This
and
kind of
another
sounds like go ahead.
and another one, I just I get regularly some a publicity thing that I signed up for that sends out people looking for stuff, and health and fitness I do for Women of Wisdom digital magazine.
Mhm.
So when I found out through they were looking for people, and I wrote in and said I'm interested in writing about health and fitness. So
Excellent. That's
yeah.
fantastic. Really cool. If you had advice to give to someone that wants to get into either writing or voice acting or narration, I know there's so many different kinds of voice acting. Forgive me for just putting a big blanket
It's
over everything.
yeah, it's huge, and people always think in voice acting they think about commercial stuff.
Mhm.
The commercial part of voice acting is like about it's less than 10% of actual voice acting jobs,
Yes.
and it's hugely competitive, and it's more about the sound of your
Mhm.
voice more than anything else. I don't do very much commercial work because they don't like old voices.
Sure. But hey,
I like
there's always
yeah,
there's a market for that type of
yeah,
you know.
yeah. I mean, I have an agent here in town. And so I do occasionally, she sends, some things do come through where they want a mature voice. And then
Mhm.
I audition for those. So, but I really more enjoy narration work like e-learning, audiobooks. Right now, I've started a job. I'm narrating crime recaps about movies,
Yeah.
movie recaps. That's kind of interesting. I
Yeah.
enjoy, yeah, yeah.
I was gonna
I've
I was
done,
gonna ask
yeah. What?
I was just gonna ask you if you feel like you get a little something like, "I am working, but this is the type of work that I would be reading this anyways." Do you
Yeah,
find that that's common? Or do you sort of look for jobs like that?
yeah. Yeah, explainer videos, doing video scripts. This is really kind of interesting stuff that, you know, I like e-learning because I learn while I'm, you know, narrating, which is
Yeah.
kind of interesting. And sometimes it's kind of fun. In fact, this is an ongoing job that I only get a little bit of it still, but I narrated it. I'm sure it's over 100 scripts, video scripts teaching math to children,
Oh, right on.
and it's been ongoing now for about a year and a half. Because now they're coming back with changes to their
Mhm.
scripts.
Yes. Yeah.
And but that's kind of fun to have to pull out my math stuff. I was
Yeah.
a math and science major anyway, so it's kind of fun to pull out my math stuff again and go, oh yeah,
Sure.
trigonometry. Oh yeah. Oh wait, geometry, trapezoid.
So cool. We get to know a little bit about like your professional life. I wanted to double back and talk a little bit about you as is it Wiccan or is am I
Yeah.
is okay. Uh
Yes.
as a Wiccan, and I'm curious. Do your neighbors ever like look out like in the blinds and go, "Oh boy, what have we got ourselves into now? Like, what is she? What's she doing?"
No, and in fact, my my partner doesn't even know I have a little Wiccan, yeah, thing set up. It's
Is
in the
that right?
kitchen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It just looks
It's
like
just like, and I,
decoration.
yeah, and I'm not really a big practitioner, but I did set up a little shrine thing.
Of
You
course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I I
So
find I find that a lot of it is just kind of like manifesting things. Like a lot of it's it may sound super crazy, like, oh my gosh, witchcraft and tarot cards and magic and the unknown, but a lot of it is like goals, kind of like setting this
yeah,
together and like lighting this candle to remind me that I, am
yeah,
welcoming wealth or
yeah,
success,
yeah,
or something like that. So
yeah.
I think it gets its name dragged through the mud often, but it's pretty harmless and kind of a good thing, I would say.
Yeah, one of my best stories is I was on a I belong, I'm on several business websites, on some platforms, and um I think I was talking about my narration of Wicca books. I've done this series. And I got this question. Oh, uh, are you a witch? I'm like, uh, okay. You can be Wiccan and not be a witch.
Sure.
And you can be a witch and not be Wiccan.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. It's like, no, I just narrated them.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh dear. So yes, it's very misunderstood. It's often, you know, because it sounds like witch, it's, equated as, but it's like I say, it's not. You To be Wiccan does not mean you're a witch, and um, you can be a witch and be Wiccan, but there's certain parameters around that, because the main thing about Wiccan is do no harm.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
And so, when I was, it was much emphasized in the books that I was narrating that even if you're doing a love potion, it is not to influence any other person. It's only to enhance your love life,
See, that's a great example of what I
but
was,
not, yeah, yeah,
like it's such got such a nefarious reputation, but it's a lot of like,
it does. Yeah.
no, I'm just kind of making my life better. All right. Leave me alone now.
Yeah. It's all about manifesting,
Yeah. Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and trying to influence other people is, yeah, it's like a big, yeah, you don't do that.
Yeah, you could call Tony Robbins a witch if if you're
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
That's great. Kris, I wanted to talk a little bit about your work. We'll double back to work real fast. You have to leave and go to a studio, or do you have a home studio set up?
Oh no, I have a home studio. It's
Wonderful.
like 2 feet in that direction.
That's great. Do you ever have any issues with like helicopters flying overhead or dogs barking or anything like that?
Occasionally dogs barking. I have two dogs and there's many dogs in the neighborhood. So, and more it's the occasional dog barking. If mine are being bad, I just shut them in.
Yeah,
And sometimes, especially in the summer, it's yard work.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like
But
clothes and stuff.
otherwise, I'm really lucky to live in a very quiet neighborhood and my studio is fully enclosed. It
Yeah,
doesn't go all the way to the floor, but it goes far enough that there's not much sound that comes in, even the float planes, because we
yeah.
live near the lake and there's a lot of float planes, especially
I,
in the summer. But no, it's, except for barking dogs and, yeah.
are
Uh,
float planes the little like go-kart? machines with the parachute on the top?
No, they're the ones that they're small planes that they can land on lakes. You
Oh,
actually see them a lot in Alaska,
yes.
but
Yes.
there's actually a lot around here because we have so much water and people fly up to the sand, the islands. They do probably, yeah.
Yeah, and tell my listeners where you are. I actually don't not
I'm in Seattle,
You're in
Seattle,
Seattle.
Washington.
Okay. Great. Right on. Very
We have a
cool.
lot of float planes.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty close or close-ish to Alaska also. Closer than I am.
Yes. And they have a really tinny wind up toy sound when they're taking off and landing. Yeah. It's
That kind of segues us into a question that I always ask on the show. What's the worst part about your job? What do you dislike?
constantly having to audition for stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
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 Yep, it's an ongoing thing. A lot of no's. How do you work with like personal like mental health, being told no so often or not getting a response so often? It can kind of beat you up.
Yeah. Um, after a while you develop a really thick skin. Because I've been an
Repetition.
actor. Yeah, I've been an actor for over 20 years. And so
Sure.
you develop a really thick skin if you want to keep going.
Hmm.
So you just realize that there's going to be a lot of no's.
Yeah. Yeah, of
And, you really celebrate the yeses.
course.
Because my podcast, I guess got a notification from Good Pods that it's in the top 100 in 3 categories
Wow,
on
that's a
Good Pods. So it's like, yay! You do a little happy dance for that stuff.
How much time a week do you spend on your podcast?
It's short. I have my own studio,
Mhm.
so I would
Okay.
say probably 4 hours or so. It's not because it's what 5 or 10 minutes.
Mhm.
It's very short. It's been described as bite-sized fun.
I like it. That's great. And that podcast again is called "Does This Happen to You?" In case anybody wants to check that out. So that's great. Do you do any vocal exercises? Do you do any, is that a thing of the past? Any like tongue twisters or anything like that?
I don't. I used to sing as warm up.
Oh,
And
that's
sometimes I
nice.
still do that, especially if I'm having some issues that I'm not happy with. I sing
Yeah.
because it's all about getting vocal placement right.
Mhm.
So for me, so yeah.
How long does that take to get your vocal cords where they need to be before you feel comfortable auditioning
Um,
a script for something?
oh, I always read through the script at least once or twice,
Mhm.
deciding what I'm going to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if things are not going well in the booth, it's like, oh my, it's not where it's supposed to be. Then I sing. Yeah,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
immediately like gets me into the right frame. Yeah.
Yeah, that may be something that people aren't aware of. Sometimes whenever you get a script where at least I do this, let me know if you if you do this as well. I will decide who this person is. I'll get a script about, I don't know, Lowe's Home Improvement has a sell on, nuts and bolts. And then I have to think, how am I a young dad? Why do I need these nuts and bolts? What, are these nuts and
Yeah.
bolts for a project? So maybe I should have some ambition, in my pitch or something like that. Do you do any of that, like character building before you grab a script?
Um, it depends on the script. Definitely, if it is a character, spend time on that character. How are they feeling? My I learned acting very late in life, and it was kind of difficult to learn. Um, and so I go very much by how a script makes me feel, especially a character that I'm doing. For Yeah, so it's a lot about what's the attitude
Mhm.
of this script, where do I want to take it. If it's a very short script, I have to come up with at least three different reads for
Sure.
it,
Yeah.
three different attitudes. For me, it's an attitude. That's kind of what I work from. So,
Mhm. Good
but yeah,
advice.
yeah, I think it needs to come from a place of where your acting comes from.
Mhm.
So for me,
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Excellent. Kris, we're at the part of the podcast where I kind of step away from the microphone and give you a platform if there's any like public service announcements that you want to give out there, or anything that you want to plug, like your show or newsletter that you do or something like that. This is definitely the time that I'd like to give my guest platform to do that. And if not, you can
oh,
pass it back to me and we'll just keep on going.
okay, great. Wow. Well, I invite everyone, if you're looking for a little funny lift to your week, to check out my podcast, Does This Happen to You? Can find it on most of the major platforms. And also, if you're a writer, I'm always looking for writers to collaborate with on my podcast. And that's one of the big things about my podcast is collaboration with writers.
Oh,
And
great.
I'm looking for humor writers who want to have their work heard in a different format, not just read, but listened to.
Mhm.
Oh,
Fantastic. I would submit myself, but I have so many kinks to work out. I'm not ready yet. That's great.
that's a big thing to take on a pilot. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
ambitious, but I'm ready. I'm ready for it. I'm gonna use some of that manifestation, you know. I'm gonna have some crystals in the window and a specific color candle rolled in like a specific herb. I just have to do the research on that and find out what that
Yeah.
is. Manifest that for myself. Uh, Kris, in tradition of every show, I always end the show with a poop story. Have you ever, either yourself or a friend of yours, do you have a story where maybe there was an accident or couldn't make it to the bathroom or close call, something like that?
Oh my goodness.
It's always like the most
Yeah.
embarrassing part of the podcast for me. Where I'm like, "Oh, why did I do
Yeah.
this? Why did
I
I
had a
make this a
problem there
tradition?"
not making it to the bathroom in time because I wouldn't give myself enough time in the morning to walk the dogs and, get to a job. So it was like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah. So, yeah. Now I give myself lots of time in the morning.
sure. I'm sure it just makes it worse, like seeing your dogs get that sense of relief, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what did I do to
Yeah.
myself? Why
Uh,
did I say?"
yeah. Yeah. They can just go anywhere they want. Yeah. Yeah. I have a dog that likes to take a dump in very weird places.
Is that
It's
right?
like on top of bushes.
Yes,
In
I've got a bush
in
pooper.
Yeah, also ground cover. Do you know how hard it is to pick dog turds out of ground cover?
Yeah, you always end up
Ah.
with a little extra. What kind of dog do you have?
They're Australian cattle dog mixes.
Ah, uh-huh. I see. I see. Yeah, I've got an Akita like German Shepherd mix, I think. I don't know. He was a sheltered,
Oh, interesting.
but you'll find like a low bush and he always looks for that first. And it's
I,
you and speaking of like difficult things to clean out, if this is like a public setting, it's not, you're not out in the woods. It's there's twigs sticking out and branches, and you have to kind
uh,
of really,
yeah.
there have been times where there's been a hole in the bag that I'm using, and then you have to strategically like maneuver around that
Yeah.
hole. It's a mess. It's a
Yeah,
mess. Never fun.
it is. Yeah.
Kris, you're a real pleasure to speak with. Thank you so much for being patient with me. I know we had some scheduling issues in the beginning, so I really, really thank you for that. So
Oh,
I really
no problem. No problem.
That's it for us. Play us out, Shitty Ukulele.